My pet goldfish, Flood, passed away. I just got back from my 2-week-long honeymoon when my friend slash fish sitter gave me the news. She was hysterical when she came over to let me know. I had an odd feeling the entire time I was gone, and even more so when she said she'd come over to my place with him. I didn't want her to feel like it was her fault, so I didn't cry until after she left. The week prior, he had turned 6 years old. Flood had been one of my oldest and closest companions. I purchased him and his 2 brothers mayonnaise, an all-black goldfish, and the other one, whose name I forget, a week or so after, I moved in with my 2 new roommates in our 3-bedroom apartment on Meserole Street in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. 2 weeks prior, I had moved out of the apartment that I had shared with my boyfriend of over 4 years when I found out that he was fucking another girl. I took the smallest room in the apartment because it was the cheapest. I painted the walls sunshine yellow and lemon yellow and slept on a futon mattress on the floor. I was totally broke and lonely and quite often drunk on $1.22s and was the happiest I had been in my life in a long time. I bought the 3 fish on a whim one day, and within 2 weeks, 2 of them died, Flood being the only survivor, and what a survivor he was. He often awoke to beer cans and silo cups floating in his bowl, but still, he swam on. I tried in vain to introduce friend fish into the tank a few times, only to find the new fish floating upside down with Flood paying them no mind. Flood also lived through several different guy friends of mine as well, paying them, too, no mind, as each one floated onto different fish bowls. I swear that Flood knew my voice and would swim to me when I would sing his theme song. Oh, Mr. Flood, Flood, Mr. Golden Flood, please shine down on me. When Flood was hungry, he would swim up to the top of the tank and suck loudly until he was fed. I shit you not, the fish asked to be fed. He was brilliant. When Rob, my now husband, and I first moved in together, I bought Flood a little to-go tank and carried him on my lap as we drove to our new cohabitation. A week or so after we moved, I cleaned out Flood's bowl, only to find him floating at the top, gasping desperately for air. Not knowing what to do, I frantically tapped the glass, hysterically calling his name. Rob, who had run out of the store, ran out to the store for a minute, returned to my tears. He grabbed a chopstick and furiously started stirring the tank's water, summoning air bubbles up for the little fish to breathe. Eventually, Flood went back into the water and swam happily around. Rob was Flood's savior that day and my hero forever. When Rob and I decided to move halfway across the country, there was no doubt in my mind that Flood would come along. From NYC to Houston, Texas, Flood took the roads in his to-go tank atop his styrofoam padding at the foot of the passenger side door. I was forced to sit cross-legged the entire 3-day drive so that Flood's tank had enough room, and I obsessively tapped on the tank every couple of miles to make sure he was still moving around. When we got to Houston, it took Flood a few days to get used to the amount of chlorine in the water. With no real job and no friends, I intently watched him uncontrollably flip upside down in his tank for a week, calling Rob every hour to keep him up to date on Flood's current state of health. I swore that he was finally a goner. Eventually, with lots of Googling and Rob driving us to every aquarium store in town, we found a cure to his illness, and for almost 2 years after that, he swam happily around his little glass bowl. It sounds weird to say that I loved a goldfish, but I really did. Flood was featured in Rob and my wedding Save the Date video and was highly represented at the wedding. He was my kid and Rob's adopted son. When Flood and I had first gotten together, I had just gotten out of the shittiest relationship I had ever been in, and Flood to me was a representation of my newfound freedom. A renaissance, if you will, in myself. Flood was a fighter and a tough guy, and he made me think that I could be one too. Like me, he was also something of a loner, but we were loners together. When I found out he died, as brokenhearted as I was, I almost felt that he knew that I had finally found a permanent partner in my new husband, and maybe his time here was done. I'm sure that sounds absolutely insane, but that's how I'd like to think about Flood's passing. I hope that he is looking down on me from his fishy heaven and dancing around to his theme song and smiling, and I hope that he's eating tons and tons of fish flakes, as many as he wants, and laughing at me because I always tried to limit his intake because it gave him gas. I love you, Flood, and I'll miss you forever.